My people, it is a very painful thing to remember Asaba Massacre. Asaba Massacre, seeking healing. A lot of Nigerians don't know what happened. 7th October 1967, a lot of atrocities happened in the land of Asaba. Nigerian soldiers committed a lot of atrocities.
Say non the meeties. That is goodbye till we meet no more.
During Biafra War, Nigerian soldiers gathered all the male child and adults in Asaba and massacred them all. They killed many people. They killed both to adults, all the male child for inside Asaba.
1970. Anya biaka ije zutandi aya Nigeria. Bia bulegu. Anya maro no bo a game of death ka iba n'imia.
In remembrance of Asaba Massacre, on the 7th October 2022, we be sit at home in entire Biafra land. On that day, it is expected that all schools, all markets, all churches, all banks will shut down for the remembrance of Asaba Massacre. Anybody will hear my voice, making talk to him brother, making talk to his sister, making one in children, making one everybody, where they close to them. This order is coming from Biafra spokesperson Simon Ekpa. Asina nti adaharu ihe ebubisi ise soloya intiminsi. Any ear, when they hear word, as they cut head in, as when they go cut ear, Fulam.
They open fire. Where will you go? Machine gun, Gahube our people. And they were slaughtered in thousands.
Welcome, my amazing viewers. Thank you so much for joining me on my program once again. I appreciate you wherever you are joining from. If you have not subscribed to my channel, please kindly subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time I upload a video. You will be among the first to receive it. Thank you so much, and remember.
All right, joining us in the studio right now is the director of the Abuja School of Leadership at the University of Abuja, Professor Philip Afaha. He's also being joined by a development strategist and public policy analyst, Michael Oluwagbemi, who is also an engineer. As we look at Nigeria's journey 62 years after independence. Good to have you join us, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
All right, welcome, gentlemen. They say if people do not know where they're coming from, they will not be able to determine where they are headed. So let's have a quick, background to Nigeria's independence and how we got here today. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Okay. Of course, before we arrived at independence, we have to look at what happened before independence. We were a people, different groups of people living in this particular territory that we now call Nigeria. I think from 1914, that is when we have this territory that we have as Nigeria. It belonged at that time to the British Empire. It was a colony from 1914 up to 1960. The territory technically was a property, so to say, of the British, because we were being colonized, we were being owned. This territory was being owned, at least in the eye of the international law. Then from 1960, we got our independence. That independence was a factor of the struggles of our forebears, the Nnamdi Azikiwe, the Herbert Macaulays of this world, the Obafemi Awolowo, the Ahmadu Bellos of this world. Most of those people, they started agitating for independence. They want to rule themselves. And not only that agitation, it was in the international system at that point in time, Europe wanted to pull out from colonialism because it was becoming very expensive. The more so as Europe was seriously bruised because of the Second World War. So Europe was on its way out to let go of the burdens that it was carrying on its shoulders. So that need to pull back, to let go some of the financial burden by Europe, coupled with the agitation here and there, especially in the African continent, gave birth to many countries in Africa becoming independent. Nigeria was one of them. By 1st October 1960, Nigeria had gotten her own independence. It has been an interesting journey that between that time and up till now, we are still a country, a proud country for that matter, a proud sovereignty for that matter. Yes, we have challenges here and there. The challenges are there, and every other country have challenges, but Nigeria has gotten this far, and for 62 years, if not anything, Nigeria has been able to remain a country that was bequeathed to us by the colonial masters. I think we have had a very tortuous journey, interesting journey, but whether it is all rosy or not, that is our history. That is who we are. That is how we came to where we find ourselves now. So we can only make it better from this point onward. We had issues. We also had some times to smile as a people, but this is where we are today.
All right, when, some Nigerians look at the current state of affairs of the country, they look back in time and say, perhaps we got independence too early. They argue that maybe we should have, tarried a bit, maybe up to the 80s or 90s before attaining self-rule. I don't know if you share in that line of thought.
Good morning again to your viewers, and thanks for the question. I want to thank the professor for giving us a very good, nuanced version of the history, because oftentimes I say that we as a people, we get very nostalgic about the past, but we always underestimate what we are doing in the present, and then we get very pessimistic about the future. The reality is that the truth is oftentimes between optimism and pessimism. It's not either too good, neither is it too bad. It is true that Nigeria has had a tortuous but interesting journey in the last 62 years. And I do not subscribe to the view that we got independence too early, because as the professor has already explained, whether we got independence or not was not even our choice. The reality was that Europe had already had a terrible World War II. Europe was decimated, and Europe could not afford to continue to fund its colonies, and colonization was looked upon in a new era, in a new world order, where Americans were the world leader, and they were not much into colonization. Colonization was looked upon as despicable and as barbaric. So it was not so much as if even if we didn't want independence, we were not going to get it. But the reality was that the world was ready to let go, and that is why we got it. But I look upon our 62 years of independence and tell Nigerians to look back and be very proud of the country they built. For one, Nigeria was not as big as this when we got independence. People forget the fact that there was a plebiscite that added a little bit, quite a bit of land to Nigeria. The vast majority parts of Adamawa and Taraba states today were added to Nigeria in 1961 after the United Nations plebiscite. So we're a much bigger country than when we got independence in 1960. In addition to that, we're a country that have emerged as one of the economic powerhouses of Africa, the richest black nation that have ever existed in the history of mankind, the country that continues to produce world leaders, including heads of international organizations, Nobel laureates, and a country that should be proud of its own achievement. We are one of only 2 countries in the world that have been able to build a federal capital in the last 100 years, ourselves and Brazil, that is occupied and actually a functional city. Abuja is the greatest achievement of Nigeria. So I look upon this and say, look, when we got independence in 1960, Nigeria had 10,000 university graduates. Today we have over 30 million. When Nigeria got independence in 1960, our average life expectancy was close to 31 years. Today is close to 52 years. When Nigeria got independence, our debt rate was about 30%. Today is about 11%. When Nigeria got independence, Nigeria had 500 kilometers of paved roads. Today we have over 50,000 kilometers of paved roads. When Nigeria got independence, we had only 1 university. Today we have well over 200 universities. I can go on and say that, you know what, we should be proud of our 62 years of journey, and then we should look towards the next 62 years with hope, with focus, trying to build a nation that is better than when we met it. When we got independence, our GDP per capita was $82. Today is over $2,100. Yes, Could we make it? Do we hope it's probably $10,000, $20,000, $30,000? Perhaps. But there's a long distance between $85 and $2,100. So it's a different country, and it's a country that we built. And we should be proud of what we built. Yes, we've had challenges. We could do better, and we should continue to push forward. But let us remember, Rome, and especially Nigeria, was not built in a day.
I must thank Michael for reminding us of, all that Nigeria has built and all that the difference between Nigeria in during independence in 1960 and today. Yes, there's a huge difference with that, analogy and analysis that Michael just gave. However, you cannot also take away the fact that Nigerians believe that Nigeria should be better off than where it is now. Recall the vision of the founding fathers was to build a united country with the recognition of the ethnic diversity that Nigeria had. Let's compare, Professor, the ideology and vision of the founding fathers with that of Nigeria's current political class and elite, who Nigerians believe are quite visionless.
Yes, that is unfortunate. Unfortunate in the sense that we have pushed to always fall in love with past leaders because of how the current leaders are behaving. If you check out those people, Bafemi Awolowo, Madubelo, Nnamdi Azikiwe, those people that actually got independence for us and actually started off this country, you notice that these were rare breeds, not because they were superhumans, but these people were groomed for leadership. They were groomed for leadership. If you check their background, if you check what they passed through in their professions, in training, in whatever means, in relating with their people, you notice that these people were actually groomed, directly or indirectly, for leadership. They were groomed both by their people, they were groomed both by the colonial authorities, they were groomed by circumstances, they were groomed by the exposures and education for leadership. If you check their citations, you will notice that these people didn't just come up to assume leadership, unlike what we have today, where anybody that runs into money, whether a 419er or a Yahoo person, will just have enough money to procure forms from political parties, and before you know what's happening, is either a senator or a governor or a president. And these people are totally disconnected from leadership, from what it takes to actually lead people, from what it takes to actually manage resources. So you notice that though Nigeria was running a regional system of government whereby these leaders took charge of their own regions, you notice that harmony. There was that harmony. The acrimony we are having today was not there in the First Republic when the Europeans handed over power to Nigeria, even though everybody was premier in his territory. You did not see, you could actually see this harmony, this working together, this understanding. You could actually see seamless development across the length and breadth of those regions. But what you have now, it's what the one professor called disarticulation. Everything is disarticulated to such an extent that even the people at the helms of authority themselves, they are confused to the extent of sometimes you could actually ask people who are at the helms of authority, what are you doing here? And for some moments they will forget their mandate. So what we had then, why we will always rely on our history, on what happened, on the experience of the first set of leaders we had in Nigeria, is that they were groomed and they had the vision and they were able to articulate their vision to the point that even the people bought into their vision. Let me give you an example. The Obafemi Awolowo educational policy in the Western region. Yes, in as much as we clap for Obafemi, we have to also clap for the people of the Western region. Why? Because you notice that nowadays there is no leader in Nigeria that can actually sell such an altruistic policy and it will have a buy-in from the people. Why? Because even explaining your policy to the people, nowadays the leaders don't need the people in formulating their policies. They just bring policies. In fact, the more the people argue, the more the people protest against the intention of government, the more the government digs into what it wants to do. And that is not how it started. There's actually death of leadership. There's a disconnection between the people leading and the leaders and the people that they are governing. So those people, our founding fathers, had vision, and the vision were properly articulated and documented. Up till now, we still know about their visions. As we are sitting now, nobody knows about the visions of the people leading different parts of Nigeria, wherever, whatever form of government we are doing. So we are now running in the dark, whereas there was vision. Yes, even people in the southern part of the country, people in the southeast knew about the vision, the ideology, the form of government, the style of government, the ideology, the vision of people of the northern government. People in the north knew about what Awolowo and his western people were doing in the early days of our independence. It was properly articulated. And even when we entered the Second Republic, even irrespective of the military interruption, you still notice the ideologies flowing. You notice even the political parties were founded on ideologies. And you'll be surprised that as a Second Republic, Second Republic, politicians talk about ideology, parties were founded, grounded on ideologies, and by today, 62 years later, you see political leaders telling the country that their party is not founded on ideology. The election is not run on ideology. People don't know. There's no philosophy attached to what people are doing. Everybody is just running in circles, and it is quite unfortunate. It's quite unfortunate. We had proper leadership. We don't have it now. Nigeria, as far as leadership is concerned, has a problem, and that virus has eaten the country up to 98% currently. So I think something needs to be done.
Look, Bemi, in your initial remarks, you did say that we have progressed as a nation since independence in 1960, and of course you alluded to the fact that Nigeria is blessed with enormous human and material resources. But whether that has translated or impacted on the quality of lives of the people, particularly the average Nigerians, remains debatable. But let's look at the structure. At independence, we had a true federal, structure, a true federal arrangement where, the various regions were largely, autonomous. But, that's changed 6 years, after, when the unitary system of government was entrenched and, of course, enthroned. How did all that, impact on our development, so far?
Thank you very much. It was very clear that our nationhood, oftentimes when people tell me and say, oh, Nigeria was forced together by the British, I try to remind them that that is not true. There were a series of London conferences before independence, the Leicester conferences that were attended by our independence leaders, where the documents on which, the founding documents on which the Nigeria's independence constitution was formed was negotiated. And the federalism you talked about was ensconced in that document. But of course, a series of crises, and this is where I'm a little bit nuanced to say, okay, fine. Our independence leaders were very development oriented, but they put politics before people. What do I mean? A lot of their politics was very ethno-religious focused, which created the chaos that allowed 1966 to happen. There was the Operation Wettier in the West. There was the whole snaffle around the Western region crisis that led to the imprisonment of Obafemi Awolowo, ultimately the 1966 coup that ultimately led to the 1967 program, which of course was the civil war. That ultimately, I feel, is the trauma that the Nigerian nation is still dealing with. Because when you go through civil war, you become traumatized. And a lot of the ills of society, be it corruption, greed, armed robbery, everything you can trace it to the civil war. So we're a nation that has been traumatized by the civil war. But the reality is, the pre-1966 constitution was very federalist. And then in 1966, when the military boys burst us in, trying to fix, thinking in their mind that they're going to try to impose one nation where everybody thinks the the same way, where whatever is happening in Lagos is the same thing as happening in Maiduguri, created new problems. Why is this so? Because what you have done is you are looking at a society that was pre-1900, was not even a country. There were 2 countries in 1900 and 2 countries and 1 colony, the Northern Nigerian Protectorate, the Southern Nigerian Protectorate, and the colony of Lagos that were joined together in 1914. These countries, just less than 60 years before 1900, were disjointed ethnic groups with obas, kings, emirs, and all of that. And so, naturally, the natural evolution is to become a federalist country. But the military burst into the scene in 1966, trying to impose their own centralized philosophy and created unitarism. What that created was social dislocation. For example, we used to have the native authority system, where you used to have your kings, and then you used to have the traditional council. They even used to have the native police authority that used to enforce the law. Suddenly the military said no, all of that should be handed over to some federal government. Policing was suddenly federalized, was suddenly centralized. So suddenly if a criminal comes to your community, you don't know that criminal anymore, because the people that they are sent to police your community are perceived as an occupying force, because they are not from the community. So we had this entire series of social dislocation that was caused because, again, the mistakes of the First Republic leaders who put politics before people. Ultimately, every country is built on people. You must build your people, then you must play politics, then you must focus on policy before you now get into projects. The problem is, when we got into 1960, we even said, okay, discard the people. Politics even does not matter at this point. Let us start making policies. So the military was concerned about centralization of policy. And so that's what led to everywhere we are today, where we are now struggling to actually implement federalism and all of these different forms of so-called decentralization of policing and all of the things that we think we need in order to govern ourselves. The result of lack of social cohesion, by the way, is what I call elite abandonment. Because the moment your social cohesion at the most base level, be it the family, the clan, the town, the village, all of that is pared away. The only group of people that can come together by elite consensus is your elite. They're the ones that come together to mend it together. But what we have in Nigeria today is that everybody looks up to, oh, government. Government. I ask everybody, does government have NIN? Does government have BVN? Who is this person called government? Ultimately, the ability to put this country back together, the ability to put the social cohesion that we are seeing that is lacking, that we are really talking about, the social cohesion at the base grassroots level, it falls on the elites. And who are the elites? It's you and I. If you have a university degree in Nigeria, you belong to the top 6% of the global population, not to talk about the Nigerian population. You belong to the top 6%, only 6% of humanity. That's a first degree. So you see somebody with a first degree, and they will tell you, oh, Nigeria is not working. No, you are the one that should make Nigeria work. You are in the top 6% of humanity. So the onus falls on us, who are the elites, to begin to re-engage with our communities. Go back to your village. Go back to your... Don't stay in Abuja. Don't stay in Lagos. All these places are just creations. The reality is, you have to go back to where you come from. And let's fix the health center. Let's fix the school. Let's fix the town hall. Let's fix our families. Let's bring back the values that we want for this country. The values when we go into our nation's motto, unity and faith, peace and progress. The first word, unity. Are we even united at the most basic clan level? You see communities, some communities in all across the south and north of Nigeria, they have these so-called ethnic programs and ethnic crises. They speak the same language, and yet they are killing each other. And the first thing we will say, oh, federal government should come and settle this, you should send military. Our military is overstretched, only 130,000 personnel. And we are all over the country trying to quell one crisis or the other. The first thing is, are we even united at the clan level? Are we united at the town level? Our elites, are they engaged or disengaged? Are they engaged in the elite consensus in order to build this country? You cannot have social cohesion if your elites are disengaged the way they are today, and the elites are not involved in some kind of consensus towards peace and progress. So we can see it all in our motto. Unity and faith is very ambitious. Unity and faith. Faith now, you're not really talking, if you think about our constitution, you're not really talking about faith as in religion. It's talking about faith in our country, faith in humanity, faith in the future. Do we have faith in this country? Our elites, are they creating alternative plans for them? Are they finding ways to, in case Nigeria burns, we are going to jackpot ourselves? Is that not what we are doing? If we believe in this country, then we have to be all in Nigeria. So elites in Nigeria, elite consensus that will build social cohesion focused on unity, faith in Nigeria in order to do what peace and progress. That is what we need.
Professor, it will appear as if Nigerians are being socialized to believe a lot of different things. And Michael talked about Nigeria being a nation traumatized by the Civil War. And yes, you can see you can see the consequences of the Civil War in our day-to-day life today, and people are ultimately more interested in survival. I think if someone cannot, survive the day, they cannot think of building a nation. And unfortunately, successive governments over the years have gotten Nigerians to the point where all they can think about at the moment first is survival. How do we change that?
Yes, Michael really articulated the issues, especially as got to do with social cohesion and all that, to the point that currently, like you alluded to, we are now thinking about survival, and people are not really thinking about other issues that should actually make existence worthwhile. It's only survival. Yes, I usually tell my students that Nigeria is running a wartime economy. Running a wartime economy, so the mentality is survival. One of my students asked me, why are Nigerians corrupt? Why is looting everywhere? I told him, in wartime, people loot. And it is not one of the international crimes, war crimes, international looting. Because
it's
at that point, yes, at that point in time, people look to survive. So the system, the Nigerian system, is currently structured for people to want to grab. It is structured for people to want to loot. It is structured for people to want to get things for their children to live till the following day. And when a society is forced into that tiny hole where everybody wants to survive, people do all sort of things. I was telling somebody, when you are paying a civil servant that is staying in Abuja 30,000 naira minimum wage, and that person has a family of 8 or sometimes 10, because people at the lower level, they give birth to more children, and you are paying that person 30,000 naira, and that person is working in ministry, maybe a very sensitive government agency that controls the wealth of the nation, that controls the, what do you expect of that person? You expect him to pay rent, pay transportation, pay his children's school fees in Abuja with 30,000 naira. You are actually forcing that citizen to steal, to survive. And as far as that citizen is concerned, he's not committing any crime because his children must eat. So the system that we are running today forces people to want to grab. The system makes people to fight as if they are dogs. That social cohesion Mike was talking about, it is true. It is leadership induced. Leadership induces people to struggle against each other because the resources are scarce. In fact, in most cases now, the resources are not there. So we are not even saying that they are scarce. The resources are not there. So people struggle. Those who are not violent enough to go into crime, go into begging. And people do all sorts of things. People cut corners. Because one, the society is forced into that tiny hole of struggling against 200 million people struggling against each other because the resources are not made available to the people. Not because Nigeria is poor. Nigeria is not poor. The resources available in this country, the monies generated by different agencies that is supposed to be generated by different agencies in this country is enough to run 3 countries. But you know the problem we have in Nigeria, you wake up today, the government will give you an impression that oil is being stolen, oil is being bunkered by small criminals, oil is not being bunkered, not being stolen by small people. I can't steal oil. I don't have what it takes to steal oil. You can steal oil. The people stealing oil are the same people running the affairs of the country, the same people running the affairs of the national oil organizations. They are the same people coordinating the theft of oil. Where would an ordinary civil servant have money to hire an ocean liner to take oil from Nigeria up to Equatorial Guinea? It takes these people also at the top to steal oil, and it takes them to commit corruption. And by the time they commit corruption, they will blame it on Nigerians. Oh, Nigeria, our people are corrupt. We are not corrupt. The leadership is corrupt. And it trickles down.
All right, Prof. So much to talk about as we look at the journey so far, as Nigeria, of course, celebrates 62 years since independence in 1962. We'll continue with this conversation, but let's go on a very quick break. When we'll come back, the discussion continues.
All right, welcome back. We continue our conversation now as we take a look at Nigeria's independence from 1960, 62 years on, governance in Nigeria, as well as the future of Nigeria 62 years after. We had two guests earlier in the studio with us. Michael Oluwagbemi is a second guest who had to just leave, had a very important appointment somewhere else and had to leave before we could come back. But we still have with us the director of the Abuja School of Leadership, University of Abuja, Professor Philip Afaha. He is also a development strategist and a public policy analyst. Good to have you still with us, Prof.
That's what I'm about.
All right, thank you, Prof. Unfortunately, Michael had to leave, but we are covered. Have interested the Prof still around. So we are discussing Nigeria 62. The progress so far, the losses perhaps, and the gains. So we still have problems, myriad of problems in virtually all our sectors. When you look at the security sector, you look at the economy, you look at even education, revenue generation, and of course, when you also look at socioeconomic indices, which are not looking up considering our population size, and of course, the availability of human and material resources, one would say that we still have much ground to cover. But in trying to tackle, some of these challenges, some persons have made recommendations. Some eminent Nigerians from across the country have made recommendations. They say perhaps we should revisit the foundation. We should tweak the foundation a bit. Some people are talking about restructuring. Some people are proposing, an entirely new constitution. Some people are saying we should return to the 1963 constitution, while some say, it will not be a bad idea for us to go back to the regional system of government which existed, during independence. But, in all of this, conversations, a lot has changed since 1960 to now. So which of these, propositions do you think, is best suited for contemporary Nigeria?
Yes, I think there is a syndrome in Judeo-Christianity and even in other major religions that talks about the Eden, where you had a wall started with a very beautiful garden, and in that garden there was so many, every other thing in good supply was in that garden. You didn't need to walk. You only need to stroll around and pick fruits and pick meats. In fact, most of them already prepared, like the quails that fell for the children of Israel to eat at a certain point in time. So human being, there's a natural instinct in human beings to always wish that the past could be brought back for them. Unknown to some of these people, history is about guiding people to really make the best of where they find themselves. Where we are now, we have moved from 1960. We have moved from 1959, 1960. We have moved from First Republic. We have moved from Second Republic. The military rule has dislocated one or two things. We have moved up to this point. Where we are now, we have to accept that this is where we are and try to see how to tinker with some things to move forward. Yes, what we had at the beginning of independence, that was the federalism, the kind of federalism we had at the beginning of independence, was the best for Nigeria. Agreed, it was the best for Nigeria. The intention was to make sure that all the regions develop in their own capacity at their own pace, and they were actually developing. But we had the military rule that came in. It was fashionable then for you to have military rule every now and then. It wasn't only in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Togo, in other parts of Africa, in other parts of the world, you had military incursion into politics. Those military incursion, of course, you know how the military is organized. It's a centralized system. The military is centralized system. So, of course, you did not expect Ironsi and his friends to come and sit down in government house and now run the country the way Balewa and Azikiwe were running the country. No, they have to raise a centralized system whereby everything goes to one central command at the end of the day. That was how the unitary system of government, what we call the unitary system of government, came into for the military by orientation couldn't have run the kind of federalism that we had in place as at First Republic. It wasn't expected of the military to do that anywhere in the world. They are not trained, they are not oriented, their brain is not designed to accommodate where people take orders from different parts of the space. So that is understood. So currently, people, there is agitation about restructuring, agitation about devolution of power. Yes, as we move on, we discover these loopholes. And each time we discover these loopholes, we resolve those things. Unfortunately, we have a very weak legislature in Nigeria. The legislature has grown so weak because these agitations wouldn't even have come from the public in the first place. We have our representatives in the Senate and in the House of Representatives who could actually see some of these loopholes and now do justice to them one at a time. And there's no 3 months that our legislature should not actually tinker on our law books, tinker on our statutes to make sure that these agitations are not there. But the legislature we have in Nigeria in recent days are totally cut off. They are not even involved in some of these things. That is why you are having these agitations. What is so difficult in amending the Constitution and following the process to amend the Constitution? What is so difficult in making bills to take care of some of these agitations? So the legislature is not doing those things, unfortunately for us in Nigeria. So the public is now shouting from every corner of the country, oh, we want this done, we want restructuring. The legislature, if properly run, can actually take care of what we call restructuring. Restructuring cannot come by presidential declaration. It should not come by people talking and shouting on the street. We have a legislature. Unfortunately, ours is weak. Because most of these issues could be taken care of if we have a very competent legislature in the country. So these are issues that can be tackled if the legislature was working. So those are the things. So, but we cannot say we are going back to 1960 arrangement. It is not possible at this point in time. You cannot stop the country as it is moving as a train. You stop it and now start to fixing it. We have to fix the country as it is moving. It is a system. You can't break the country, say in Nigeria, shut down for 2 weeks so that we restructure. The restructuring have to come in piecemeal. We restructure the financial system in the country. We restructure the devolution as far as the local government arrangement is concerned. Like my colleague was talking about the police system in the country. Once in a while, within a span of 4 years, all these issues can be taken care of if we have a competent legislature. These are what is so difficult for the National Assembly to do about the police system, that you have to leave it to civil society. Civil societies can only do advocacy. Civil society can only educate the people. They can only talk and educate the people. They can't change. It is the legislature that should do that. So unfortunately, we don't have the kind of legislature that look at these issues squarely and get it done. Then two, the political will. That is why we keep talking about leadership. Because in this part of the world, leadership is not for service in Nigeria. In other parts of the world, leadership is for service. In Nigeria, leadership is business. In Nigeria, leadership is employment. People who aspire to go into leadership position actually see it as they are looking for employment. So the moment they win that presidency, the moment they win governorship, the moment they win election to become Senate or House or Assembly members, immediately they see it as employment, not for service. So leadership, our perception for leadership, which is like for business or for employment. I think it's what's really...
Prof, I hate to cut you short, but obviously from everything you're saying, there's a dearth of good leadership in Nigeria. There's a program, an event, 2022 Independence Day Dialogue, Nigeria at 62, Finding Leadership Solutions, is this event that you are part of. Tell us quickly about it as we round off this segment.
Yes, then my university set up the Abuja Leadership Center. Abuja Leadership Center is actually a TED-funded center in my university, domicile in my university. And we started off 2 years ago, and this is going to be our first major outing. So we decided to take advantage of the fact that we are approaching our 67.
Thank you so much for your patience to watch from the beginning to the end. I hope you have learned something from the video you have just watched. The video you have just watched is to bring information to your doorstep and for educational purpose. It is not to demonize anybody. Let us watch continuously and see who can be able to make a sense out of every nonsense we are seeing. We must continue. We move. It doesn't matter what they do. It doesn't matter what they say. They will kill us. We will kill them. At the end of the day, Biafra is here. Thank you for watching. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please kindly subscribe to the channel. Click the notification bell so that you're notified each time I upload a video. You will be among the first to receive it. Thank you, and remember, blessed. Bye-bye. See you again.